one of these little podcasts for you. Hope you're watching the other ones so that you're gaining all the knowledge you need for the exam at the end of September. As you can see by what's on the screen, this one I'm going to do today is the nervous system and its relation to exercise. All right. I think this is lesson 4. This, so we are getting on. So only a few more to go, really. As you can see there, the learning outcomes and assessment criteria that are obviously stated there. The ones that we're interested in are, by the end of today, you need to be able to describe the role and functions of the nervous system, describe the principles of muscular contraction, describe the all or non-law of motor unit recruitment, describe how exercise can enhance neuromuscular connections and improve motor fitness. So, first of all, as we normally do at the start of these sessions, I want you to just obviously write down or just think to yourself any names or anything that you may know relating to the nervous system. All right, you can obviously pause this here if you want to give yourself a little test. All right, so a few things that you might have been able to see there is to do with the nervous system that might spring to mind are obviously the brain, which is integral to the nervous system, which you'll find out as we go through this lesson. You've got the all or non-law, which you may not have heard of before. Obviously stress in the nervous system, if you're nervous, that kind of stress. You might know that it's to do with, or that nerves have an important role in muscle contraction. The spinal cord obviously is a really big part of the nervous system, and just nerves in general you might put there as well. So, the function of the nervous system, what does it actually do? So it's the main control and communication centre of the body. Okay, it's the body's, it's the messaging system for the body. Okay, it's very important. It's responsible for maintaining homeostasis in the body, which is balance. For example, the dilation of blood vessels, temperature control, digestion, that's all controlled by the nervous system. All right? They provide an electrical stimulus that triggers skeletal muscle as well to contract. So when you move, the whole reason for you moving is because nerves are firing on the muscles and causing them to contract and therefore move. And all the instructions that the nerves need obviously come from the brain. It's a very complex system that we all have, but that is the way it works, basically. All right, so structure of the nervous system. Okay, it goes into 2 main divisions. You've got the central nervous system, or it can be abbreviated to CNS, is the brain. And then the spinal cord is like, imagine the underground system in London, okay? You've got the brain, which is one of the main stations, okay? And then you've got the spinal cord, which is one of the main trunk routes that the train has to go down to deliver, obviously all the people, but in our case, all the messages to all the muscles and different parts of the body as well. And then we've got the peripheral nervous system, or the PNS. So peripheral just means, obviously it means the outer, basically. So anything outside the brain or the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is made up primarily of the nerves that lie outside, as I've just said then, the spinal cord. They detect our senses. So when our touch, our feel, not just of hard objects as well, but of our environment around us. Obviously it's smell as well, hearing, touch. Everything like that is controlled by our peripheral nervous system, okay? Which then send messages back to the brain, and then the brain interprets what goes on. I think we'll go into that a bit more detail further on. So the peripheral nervous system is also divided then, okay, into the somatic system, which controls voluntary or conscious movement of the skeletal muscle. So things such as obviously when we stand up and walk away, or if we run, or if we catch something, they're all voluntary movements which we're in control of. Okay, we decide that we want to move in a certain way, and that's the somatic system which will control that. Then you've got the autonomic system, and as the name suggests, that's the automatic control, and controls that are involuntary, and we do not have any real control, well, don't have any conscious control over, such as our heartbeat, digestion, and obviously our breathing as well, our lungs filling up. We have no real control over that. I mean, we can obviously hyperventilate, obviously, but the control of the inspiration, expiration is part of the autonomic system. Okay. So the main role of the nervous system is to gather information. So obviously with our hands, our feet, our body in general, we can gather information about our outside world, and we can analyse it and interpret the information that we're getting. Okay, and the brain will initiate an appropriate response. So we get a sensation, then we have to analyse it and think, right, what does this mean? And then we can respond to whatever's going on. So let's say we're a sprinter. We get the sensation of the starter pistol going off. We analyse it. What does that mean? Oh yeah, it means we need to get a move on. Okay, it means we need to go. So our response, our action to that is to send stimulus to the legs to crack on. All right. So that's one of the most simplest ways of explaining it. So the nervous system, the PNS, which again is the peripheral nervous system, sensors throughout the body collect information regarding the internal and external environment, then send this information to the central nervous system via sensory nerves. Okay, so basically all your nerves gather the information, and then they all guide the information to the spinal cord, which then sends the messages back up into the brain, and the brain is the control center basically. And then, as we've said before, that decides what course of action is needed from within there, basically. So the nervous system summary. So sensory receptors gather a stimulus. So in our hands, in our nose, in our feet, everywhere we have nerves. They gather information from stimulus. Then the action potential along a sensory nerve. Again, that just means it's moving across to the central nervous system, where the brain or the spine interprets the signal, and the action is then given by the brain, but the action is actually carried out by, obviously, the peripheral nervous system in the form of, maybe your arms or your legs or any other part of your body that's obviously not connected to your central nervous system. All right. Another thing as well, obviously, it might not be a muscle that's being stimulated. It might be an organ, so it might be, your central nervous system telling your stomach to digest, or your large intestine to excrete, or your heart to beat. Okay, all of that is governed. It's the main underpinning message from the whole thing. All that is governed by the nervous system, primarily the central nervous system. But the worker part of the nervous system, is the peripheral part. That's where obviously movement actually takes place. So as you can see there, you get a stimulus in to the receptor. Okay, it then sends a message down the sensory neuron. Okay, into the motor neuron. Obviously, it's gone up then into the CNS, which is the spinal part of the spinal cord, and into the brain. The motor neuron has then been triggered, and then a response is then affected after that. So again, that could be a movement of the arm, the digestive system kicking in, the heart speeding up, anything like that. Okay, and that's all triggered from a stimulus. So let's take it back to another example. If we see something that scares us, or let's say if we go back to caveman times, we saw a saber-toothed tiger that was about to run after us. Okay, that's the stimulus there. Straight away saying, right, we need to sort something out here. So the sensory neuron sends the message up into the spinal cord, into the brain. The brain says, right, get a jog on. Sends the message back down to a motor neuron, which then fires. The muscles contract, and we start running off to hopefully try and save ourselves from being eaten. Okay, that's a pretty straightforward example there. So ignore that for now. We don't need that bit. Again, this is just a bit of a memory jogger. Can you remember any of the key principles of muscle contraction? Because obviously, as we've said before, the neurons are vital to the muscles contracting, basically. Okay, we're going to go into that now. So the key principles of muscle contraction there, muscles cross joints, the attached bones, we have the origin and insertion, which again we've been through in our previous task. What we're really concerned of here is that the voluntary control is controlled by the motor neurons that fire the muscles, basically, after the central nervous system has decided what course of action needs to be taken. Do we need to throw something? Do we need to run? Are we swimming? And also, the neurons have an integral part in the sliding filament theory, which we also went into in detail in the last podcast. So if you're not sure about the sliding filament theory, go back to the last podcast, have a recap there, and then come back to the nervous system, which we're doing now. Okay, but the nervous system is responsible for any muscle contraction that occurs within the body. Again, there's just another another diagram there of the sliding filament theory. So you've got the actin and myosin sliding against each other. Just a little bit of a recap. Now, as you can see, moving on to motor neurons, which are what are responsible for the movement. So an individual motor unit is composed of a group of muscle fibers and a motor nerve that stimulates these fibers. So imagine you had a Frankenstein in front of you, okay? And in order to make it move, you had to attach some kind of car battery to it. All right? You sent electrical pulse through that and it'd make the Frankenstein move. That's basically what's happening inside us, but just in a more, obviously, sophisticated way. All right, we get electronic pulses from the brain, which make sure that the muscle fibers are contracting in a certain way. Now, the route it takes, okay, as you can see, the little blue diagram there, okay, something called the dendrite, which collects the signal from the stimulus, okay, and then that signal is passed along the axon and on through the myelin, which coats the axon, which basically has been found in recent studies that skill acquisition is directly linked to the amount of myelin which is around the axon nerve. Okay, so the more and more you practice something, the more myelin gets wrapped around the nerve, and therefore the skill is then cemented with it, hardwired within the nervous system, and that's why apparently practice does make perfect. Okay, we're getting towards the end of this now, guys. So we're looking at now the all or none law. So basically, what that means is firing a nerve within a motor unit will generate the stimulus to fully contract all the associated muscle fibers, or none, basically. So you can't have half a nerve firing. Okay, it's either up firing all or nothing. Okay. So there's no partial stimulus or contraction of a motor unit or its fibers. When an impulse is sent down a neuron, all the muscle fibers within that motor unit will be inverted. Okay. The motor unit will activate all its fibers or none. Now you might think that's a bit strange, because you might think, well, how come my whole arm isn't moving every time I want to, throw something, or why don't both my legs move when I'm trying to kick the ball? Okay, and that's because there are different motor units within each muscle. Okay, as it says there, to generate a great amount of force, the nervous system recruits a large number of motor units. And then obviously for a lesser degree of force, the nervous system recruits a smaller number of motor units. So basically, your body and your brain has to decide how many of these motor units to activate. Okay, if it's a subtle movement we're using, you're looking at maybe one or two. And then if you want more of a explosive movement, such as sprinting or throwing something hard or bowling a ball, then you'd be looking at recruiting 3 or 4 motor units. And as you can see on that graph there, it shows you the force it's generated by 1, 1 and 2, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, so as you can see, the more power you want, the more force you want to generate, the more motor units are recruited. All right, that's all you need to know for that part. Now, adaptations of exercise on a nervous system. Okay, one long-term adaptation to resistance exercise is the recruitment of more motor units. Okay, so if you take part in more exercise, you can recruit more and more motor units, and as we've just said, that then generates more force, which then would mean you could lift more or you could push more, and therefore you would be, as well as gaining muscle mass, you would also have a more efficient nervous system as well. Okay, so it's in conjunction with getting more muscles. So nerves don't make you stronger directly, but with the muscles and the nerves as well, they make obviously your strength more efficient, basically. Let's move on from there. Okay, neuromuscular adaptations to exercise. From the aerobic endurance side of things, the type 1 muscle fibers will develop an increased size and number of mitochondria, increased oxygen delivery to the muscle fibers, increased aerobic enzymes within the muscle tissue, a greater supply of glycogen and triglycerides for energy, and improved tissue tolerance to resistance to fatigue under aerobic conditions. Okay, now they've got the foundation within the muscular system, but again, as we've said before, with more training, you can also gain more nerve pathways, which make the firing, faster, more efficient, and more prolonged as well. Okay, so they're also adaptations through exercise. And if you want to just go through yourself as well, through the strength type 2 muscles there, you don't need me to read through them. Again, guys, you can pause and rewind through this whenever you like if you miss anything at all. Okay, so we're moving on to neuromuscular connections and motor fitness. So skill-related components of fitness include, as we've done before, guys, balance, coordination, speed, power, agility, reaction time. Specific types of exercise will enhance neuromuscular connections and improve motor fitness. Okay, it's just things that I'm just reiterating things there, Anna. Okay, basically, the more you exercise, the more connections you get. All right. Now, there's a little quiz there, so what I'd like to do is just pause the video and just try and answer as many questions as you can there. If you just go straight through it, that's fine. But if you do take part in these quizzes, it's going to help you remember things. It's going to add to your learning. So I'd definitely suggest that you just take 30, 40 seconds just to pause the video now and just answer those questions which are on there and see how well you do. All right, and that is it for today's little podcast. So you've got your learning review there. So now what you should be able to do is you should be able to describe the role and functions of the nervous system. If you can, again, revisit this video. If you're still having issues, write down the issues you've got. And I've told you, when I come in for our revision session in 2 weeks, we can go over any areas which you're still concerned about even after these podcasts. All right. So the second point as well, you should be able to describe the principles of muscle contraction. You should be able to describe the all or non-law of motor unit recruitment. And also, you should be able to describe how exercise can enhance neuromuscular connections and improve motor fitness. All right, guys, so I'll leave it there now. Like I say, any issues, email me or call me. If they're important issues, please do call me or text me because I will get back in touch with you straight away. Anything else, you can leave to an email and I will get back to you as soon as I see it. Alright guys, thank you for listening to that, and we'll see you soon.